Hello and welcome to Climate Check with me, Mary Mwiikisa. Now behind me is a dried farm of maize, and it is as it should be because it is about time to harvest. But Zambia suffered a major drought about 2 years ago where most smallholder farmers who depend on rain-fed agriculture were affected. And of course, these were similar pictures at that time because of the drought. Now, the good news is that the Zambia has attracted a grant of $30 million from the Green Finance Fund GCF, and of course, the Green Climate Fund GCF, and this will go towards supporting smallholder farmers be able to absorb the shocks that come with extreme weather. I'm here at the Acre Fund Zambia offices to speak to the country director on this very important matter. Now imagine if trees could provide Wi-Fi, just how many trees you would plant? Well, they provide oxygen. We definitely cannot do without it. Destruction of nature such as forests has led to irreversible climatic changes to our world. Join me as I talk to policy formulators, change makers and climate change interest groups on Climate Check, weekly on this channel. Now you are the solution to climate change. How is climate change currently affecting smallholder farmers in Zambia, and what trends are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, so it's becoming increasingly more difficult, especially as a smallholder farmer, to adapt to shifting rainfall patterns. Farmers are both seeing more frequent drought events, but also more erratic rainfall throughout the season, which increases the likelihood of dry spells, for example. Some years this could also lead to greater rainfall in a shorter period of time, which leads to floods. So in short, farmers have a more difficult time to predict what the weather is going to be and plant and make changes accordingly.
And now regarding climate financing, Zambia recently did receive support of about $30 million, and this is a great shot for the farmers. In your thinking as an organization, what does this mean for farmers in practical terms, in terms of what changes will they see?
So under this grant, led by the Ministry of Finance, Acre Fund is a key executing entity, and we have a very kind of farmer-facing view and also provide services direct to farmers. So from their perspective, from a farmer perspective, what this grant will provide is what we call a triple shield protection. First, it will provide more improved insurance, so that would include better value for farmers in case of, for example, a drought event. It will include faster payouts so that farmers can then adapt for the next season and still be able to have enough time to purchase inputs for the next planting season. On the second key component is around agroforestry, with the Department of Forestry kind of strengthening a national indigenous tree seed supply chain, which would enable more farmers to plant more soil health trees, for example, or other trees that can diversify their incomes on their farmlands. And then the third component, kind of led by Acre Fund, is providing both those kind of agroforestry or tree seedlings direct to farmers, last mile delivery of both agroforestry services but also inputs on credit, so that farmers can choose the right inputs, whether it's maize seed or other legume seeds that are fit for purpose for the upcoming season. So together it's all a triple shield. Farmers not only have to plant right, they have to be protected in cases of extreme climate events, and they also have to think about long-term soil health and moisture retention interventions such as agroforestry, so not only for their own families this planting season, but also for their future generations.
Now, climate smart agriculture is a big buzzword right now. How can you break it down and what it looks like in the real life of a farmer, especially the farmers that are working with you?
Yeah, I think there's like two key aspects of climate smart agriculture. One is on the short term. How can farmers choose the right products, right seed type for that rainfall that we predict that coming season, so that they can get enough profit to build their asset base and plant the next season. And then the second aspect is long term. How can farmers improve their soil so that they get what we call maybe more crop per drop. So in cases of poor rainfall, they can still get a good harvest. In cases where for even fertilizer prices increase, that their soil health is sufficient enough that they can apply fertilizer effectively to get more yield. So it's a short and long-term kind of intervention that farmers need to think through when we consider climate-smart agriculture.
And what gives us hope right now, and what still needs to happen at policy and community level, especially in order for us to truly create the climate proof in Zambia's agriculture sector?
Yeah, I think for me personally is two aspects that give me hope. One is on the farmer level, the community level. We're seeing an increasing demand from farmers to think about how can they adapt on a season basis, but also adapt long term, right? How can they make changes now, interventions now, that will make them more adaptable, their grandchildren more adaptable.
Which is more important.
Exactly. And so that kind of demand that we're now trying to fill is extremely hopeful. I think the second one is this public and private partnership that, Ministry of Finance, for example, with organizations such as Acre Fund, we're seeing through this grant is, it takes everyone to get involved, right? We need interventions from the private sector, we need interventions from the NGO sector, we need interventions from the government, from the policy side of things, and only if we do kind of concerted collective effort can we kind of provide greater adaptation, greater shield for smallholder farmers to kind of tackle these problems that we're facing.
And how are we faring as a country regarding attracting and accessing climate finance?
I mean, I'm not an expert here, but I think overall quite good, as this grant kind of indicates. This is the first kind of project-specific Green Climate Fund grant that has been awarded to a government entity. There's also a new climate finance unit sitting under the Ministry of Finance that's been set up. I think the announcement was made a few weeks ago. Set up to attract more climate funding. So I think both this grant and that unit and other movement made by the government is setting Zambia up as an attractive destination. It's also setting the government up in a way that they're being more proactive, right? Seeking financing before disaster strikes, as opposed to being reactive, which I think is an extremely promising path.
And lastly, what does the future look like for Zambia's agriculture sector? Because compared to other countries like Kenya, you see the curve going up, but for Zambia, you see the curve slowly going down. If at all we're not doing as we should be doing at this stage, how can we lift the graph?
I think it is definitely complex, and I think things maybe can happen at the policy level to both attract investment, but also to increase potential new markets. Things can definitely happen at the farmer level, especially smallholder farmer level. I think this is the new reality, within the context of Zambia, within its existing rainfall patterns and the projections. We're going to be seeing increasing risk that we'll just have to start mitigating earlier. So I think, for Zambia to remain and be competitive, we need to make those interventions now. We need to think about what does it look like in the next 5, 10 plus years, as opposed to what does it look like next year. I think providing a bit more confidence to smallholder farmers that there would be market for some of these new crops or existing crops away from maize is one step. Providing the right seed for farmers so that they know if they plant this seed, they will get decent yields as long as they adopt the right practices. It's basically about de-risking smallholder farmers' ability to diversify. Maize is a big market. Farmers plant a lot of maize because they know there's market for maize. They know they can get a relatively okay price for maize. And so insurance is also a key program, right? It de-risks the ability for farmers to take a bigger risk. And at this point in time, like you rightfully point out, most smallholder farmers are focused on maize planting. If we can de-risk it through better market linkages, maybe more attractive policies, or even through the adoption of insurance, this should accelerate that diversification to other non-maize crops, so that they can see that there's actually other sources of income selling other crops.
Now, recently, the Zambia Climate Country Development Report, CCDR, was launched in Lusaka. Minister of Green Economy and Environment, Mary Mwiikisa, was the guest of honor at the event. And of course, this is what happened at the launch.
Zambia has officially launched the Country Climate and Development Report, CCDR, marking a significant step toward integrating climate action into the country's development agenda. The launch, held in Lusaka, brought together senior government officials, development partners, and private sector representatives. The event opened with calls for urgent and coordinated action to address the growing impacts of climate change on Zambia's economy.
Recommendations are structured around levels of ambition. And there are no regrets actions, measures that are relatively low cost and deliver immediate benefits and make sense even under today's climate condition. And then from there, the report moves on to more ambitious reforms and investments that can shift Zambia decisively into a higher growth, more resilient trajectory. And taken together, these actions would put Zambia on a path towards becoming a green and climate resilience upper middle income country. The report is not intended as a prescription. It's not from outside, many of you in this room. Its value will be its use to inform policy choices, to guide investment, and to strengthen partnership. And of course, we at the World Bank stand ready to support the implementation.
Speakers highlighted that Zambia is facing increasing climate pressures, particularly in agriculture and energy, which are critical to economic stability.
The nexus between climate change and development cannot be overemphasized. Climate change has been consistently identified as a significant threat to sustainable development due to its direct impact on economic growth. For instance, drought can negatively affect yields in the agriculture sector and disrupt agribusiness value chains, reduce hydropower generation, and increase adaptation-related costs and lower labor productivity, thus ultimately suppressing the country's gross domestic product. Flooding, on the other hand, can damage public infrastructure, including buildings, roads, and bridges, and strain the treasury and divert resources away from economic growth initiatives.
We stand at a pivotal moment because evidence shows that climate impacts are reducing productivity, undermining infrastructure, and threatening long-term growth prospects. In countries like Zambia, for example, climate shocks disrupt agriculture, energy supply, and transport systems, illustrating how deeply climate vulnerability is intertwined with economic performance.
The Minister of Green Economy and Environment officially launched the report, describing it as a key tool for guiding Zambia's transition to a low-carbon and climate-resilient economy.
This report comes at a crucial time when Zambia is intensifying efforts to align climate action with inclusive and sustainable development. Indeed, this report we are launching today provides us with both a clear diagnosis of the challenges we face and a practical pathway towards a more resilient and prosperous future. The report brings a powerful message of hope. It makes it clear that there is no trade-off between climate action and development. Therefore, climate-smart reforms are essential for achieving a more resilient, inclusive, and higher growth development pathway. A green growth trajectory is not only possible, it is within our reach. In response to these challenges, the government, working closely with stakeholders, has already taken significant steps to strengthen the national policy and institutional framework for climate action.
The report outlines priority actions in climate-smart agriculture, energy diversification, and resilient infrastructure, while also identifying investment opportunities to support implementation.
These are the headline results. And the first things I want to point out are that each decade, one is that the National Green Growth Strategy, the climate impacts on it are about half those on the business as usual. But remember, and going back to the previous slide, that those impacts are felt by a much wealthier population.
Climate and development financing billions of dollars in the next 5 years and then the following 2 decades. So in the next 5 years alone, we estimated investments of around $48 billion, 33 billion of which are development finance. Some of this is already happening, but the focus here really would be on prioritizing climate sensitive sectors. But then we're looking at incremental climate action. This is really the two additional of around 14 billion in the next 5 years alone.
Stakeholders say the report will play a critical role in strengthening the implementation of Zambia's 9th development plan, ensuring development remains inclusive, sustainable, and climate responsive. As Zambia moves forward, the focus now shifts to turning these commitments into concrete action. Dominic Davis Chifumbe, reporting for Climate Check, Lusaka.
Welcome back to Climate Check. As we wrap up the show, the young people are the hallmark of climate implementation. And of course, in the next interview, I speak to a youth activist who is at the helm of organizing the inaugural Youth for NDC Forum that will take place in Zambia, and it will attract over 300 delegates from across Africa. This is what he had to say.
The background of the inaugural African News for NDC Forum is coming from the dialogue that we had during the Climate Week in Addis Ababa, which was the second one, because the first one we had in Kenya, 2023, and now we had the second one in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, 2025. From the dialogue, I was one of the young people that represented African News to present the consultation that was taken on the meaningful youth engagement in the NDC process from the country level to the African level. So from the negotiation, from the discussion, one of the resolution was that how can we build meaningful conversation on NDC process among young people, because we have seen that young people are not much engaged, or they are less engaged in this process, particularly for NDC. So from the this dialogue and the proposal was that the youth that are here must take it forward by engaging the African young people into the NDC process, because Africa is the most vulnerable continent. And once we drive this process from the African continent, then it means that the impact in implementing the NDC process will be huge. So, and how do we start this process? So this is why we are organizing the inaugural, the first ever forum on NDC in Africa, so that young people from Africa then can come and learn and to understand the NDC process. So the main focus of the NDC forum is that you want to build capacity of young people. They need to understand now what NDC is. So NDC is actually the center or the pillar of the Paris Agreement, which was achieved in 2015. So this NDC now we are focusing 2025 to 2030, which is NDC 3.0. So this is a huge process of where now, how do young people engage in this process? So we are seeing countries now submitting report, we are submitting the priorities that they want to achieve in the next 5 years, so that the next group of stock takes, they can able to stock take what has been presented, what has been achieved at country level, and on how they can reduce, because the Paris Agreement has two sides. We have the 40% on mitigation, and we have over 60% on adaptation. So on the 40% mitigation, we're talking about countries reducing emissions. On the other side, we are talking about the broader view on adaptation. We talk about transparency, we talk about countries are having an NDC registry and all these processes on the other side. So so young people now come to learn this process so that when they go back to their country, they can able to hold their government accountable, on the terms of climate action.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about climate finance, because all the implementation that we are talking about as a country, we already have our second NAP. We also have we also have various strategic plans, including our national green growth strategy. But all these require financing in order for us to see tangible impact in the green space. As a forum, are you going to look into climate finance, and what approach are you going to take?
So on climate finance, I'm glad that you brought this important, and I've been part of this consultation as a young people representing young people in Zambia, of which I understand the NAP process, the green growth strategy, and the other policies that have actually been adopted or presented. So these actually hold the government on what they're supposed to do. And climate finance comes in as a critical pillar in terms of achieving these plans that have been presented, that are there on the table. And now, young people, we need to drive this thing because we are actually the center of the implementation process. So the climate finance, actually, we are calling the different stakeholders actually to come on board and put resources together, in one basket, put resources together and trickle down climate action actually to the grassroots, the most vulnerable communities in rural areas specifically in our country. We can tell that the country faced the hugest or the worst drought, yes, and we could see the impacts of the vulnerabilities of our the women, the young people, the aged, the children, and so this calls on how we can actually mobilize local resources at national level. We shouldn't always depend at the global space. Sometimes the process to get those is so it takes a complicated, it's complex. So we just need to build our own capacity, build our own resources, identify priorities on how much we can from this plan that have been achieved or designed, and then allocate resources, and then make a accountability and transparency process in terms of implementation, and invite other civil societies, academia to come on board and implement these priorities that are in the NDC. And I can assure you Zambia can be one of the top countries out of 194, somewhere around there, 202 worldwide countries in terms of implementing NDCs and other priorities in line with the Paris Agreement. So it's a very good privilege, and we are looking forward to see you apply in big numbers, so that and make sure that you put your best as you apply, so that you become one of the approximately about 350 delegates. Yes, but if opportunity comes, it may actually increase to 500 delegates to attend the forum.
Okay. On which date?
The date is we have 17th and 18th July 2026, and the venue will be at the University of Zambia main campus.
We have come to the end of Climate Check for this week. We were focusing on climate finance, and of course, as a country, we are indeed headed somewhere in terms of attracting and indeed accessing this finance that is much needed for Zambia's adaptation programs. My name is Mary Mwiikisa. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.